We look forward to the time when there is no more night, when your people can come out of hiding, when your people can't stop all the fighting, when peace is established across the nation, and we bow before you in adoration. At the New Jerusalem, when the war is done, when the world is new, the tribes are one, the New Jerusalem, that's where we'll be, just worshiping the King of Kings, the God of all.
Shabbat Shalom. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to talk about another kind of a four-part series of today's Torah portion, which is the Torah portion of Mishpatim. Mishpatim has quite a few things to deal with. And the first part that we're going to talk about is kind of interesting. It might make a few people upset, but it's simply talking about, when he talks about the laws that he's given, he's talking about how to treat people, how things need to be dealt with in certain situations. So the first part of this series is about female servitude. And what is the surprising purpose of the Bible's female slavery laws? All right, so yes, unfortunately, at that time, slavery was allowed, also for males, and many things were allowed that these days are not allowed. So in this week's Parasha, we read about the laws of the female slave. And is the Bible actually condoning parents to sell their daughter into slavery? How are we, as 21st century students of the Bible, or of the Torah, meant to understand this? And more importantly, how are we meant to apply that, what the Bible teaches us about female slavery? All right, so in this first video, I will show you that the laws of female slavery may not be as they appear. Female servitude may actually help to address social and economic inequality. As far from barbaric, female servitude may be one of the Torah's means of creating a fairer society and a better world. At least it deals with how to treat people, right? So, my name is Rabbi Harold Clint Fry, and I want to welcome you to this week's Parasha of Mishpatim. Now, today I want to take on a topic, like I said, that we don't often talk about nowadays. The very notion of it also does seem almost barbaric in our day and age. And like I said, it is the topic of female servitude. Now, how could the Bible condone selling a daughter into slavery? The Torah, or the first 5 books of Moses, recognizes the institution of servanthood in general. Remember, slavery was a fact of life in the ancient world. If we remember, the Israelites were taken out of a brutal slavery with the Egyptians. So God, for some strange reason, allowed slavery to still happen, but he had some guidelines of treatment and how to deal with slavery. It was not meant to be a barbaric way of dealing with people. It was meant to be done in a very ordered way and in a godly way. So it took the advent of industrialization across the globe to rid the world of slavery. Unfortunately, we know there is still slavery on some levels, and it will probably never stop until Yeshua, or Jesus, comes back to reign for 1,000 years. So once factories became commonplace, machines could do the work that people did. Well, the Torah was written in a time in which slavery was an economic fact. Seemingly, the Torah seeks to make it humane rather than ban it immediately and outright. So according to the Torah in this week's Parasha, father has a right to sell his daughter into servitude. His little daughter, he can sell her anytime before the age of 12. Because remember, at that time, a female was considered an adult at the age of 12. And boys or males were considered as adult males at the age of 13. All right, so when you just listen to that law, it kind of strikes you as an awful thing to happen. I mean, here's a little girl being sold into servitude by her father. And again, it doesn't even seem to make any economic sense. You can imagine an older girl, maybe a teenager, an adult, having real economic usefulness. But a 7-year-old, 8-year-old maybe, I don't know. How is it that we can come to grips with these laws? This is our Torah, okay? This is the old first 5 books of the Old Testament where the law of Moses is given. And how do we understand it? So let's take a long shot at trying to understand this together by actually rereading the text. Okay, if we put it together, I think we'll find a fascinating picture that we might never have imagined at the first and in the first part, in the beginning. So how the Torah handles the issue of slavery in general. Now, V'hi yimkor ish et bito lama. That's the first part. When a man shall sell his daughter as a maidservant. Okay, maidservant. That's a girl who would sit there simply serving in the house. Lo tetzeh ki tetzet ha-avadim. She shall not leave the servitude the way other servants leave servitude. Okay, now what does this interesting expression mean? What are the kinds of servants? Well, seemingly male servants. The female servants would not leave the way a male servant would. Okay, so now the Gemara is puzzled by this because halikally, a female servant does leave in every way in which a male servant leaves. A male servant is only allowed to serve for 6 years. In the 7th year, he has to go free. Same thing for a female servant. A male servant leaves in Yovel, which is the year of Jubilee, which happens once every 50 years. Okay, a female servant would leave also at that time. In what way does she leave? In a way that is different than the other male servants. So, Imra'a beine Adonia asher lo yada behefta. If she is so evil in the eyes of her master that he does not marry her during her term of servitude, then at that point he, the master, must give the father the right to redeem his daughter in a prorated way. So just instead of letting her go, she has to be bought back by the father in a prorated way. Okay, so here it was given the chance to marry her by the master. Okay, so for example, if I sold her into servitude for $6,000 or 6,000 euros for 6 years and there's only 2 years left in her term, the master should allow the father to buy her back for $2,000 rather than the $6,000 for which she was initially sold. So the remaining part which she was sold for, okay, would be allowed. She would be allowed to be bought back. Now this is kind of puzzling because the Torah kind of jumps in this whole idea of marriage. So those who like to talk against, how certain countries are marrying girls when they're very young, I'm not in agreement with it, but in some cases, in some cultures, it's still looked upon as normal. Okay, I don't agree with it myself, but that's how they look at it. And that's how it was looked at back then. So, La'am nachri lo yimshal lemachra bevido ba. Then for sure, the master can't sell her to anyone else. Okay, he cannot resell her. Bevido ba, in so far as he has dealt treacherously with her. Okay, he didn't marry her. He just took her and used her as a slave, and that's it. What does it mean? How has he dealt treacherously with her? He bought her as a slave. He didn't marry her. Her father didn't choose to redeem her. So where is this treachery? Where is this bad way of treating her? Well, ve'im livno yiyadanea. He can marry her off to his son. Wow. So instead of him marrying her, if he has a younger son, he can marry her off to the younger son, or to the son. So, kemishpat ha banot yasela. And if he does, he has to treat her then like a daughter, no longer as a slave, but like a daughter. Okay, so that changes everything. Imacharet yikach lo. If the master or his son decide again to take another wife, because in those days polygamy was allowed, and in some countries it still is, shira kesuta vonata lo yigra. Then he should go in no way diminish the rights of his first wife, that is the servant girl, the clothing that he would give her, the food that he would give her, the times that he spends with her, the moments of intimacy, okay? So he shouldn't diminish any of that. So by the way, this is a source for a man's obligation in these three basic things in marriage: food, clothing, and intimacy together. That's it. All right, those were what they looked at. And it's strange that these basic obligations of marriage should come in this kind of interesting entangled case of a master marrying a servant girl. Now finally, in im shalosh ele lo yase la, and if he doesn't do these three things, the master, one, if he doesn't marry her; two, if the father doesn't take him up on the offer to redeem his daughter; and three, if he doesn't give her in marriage to her son. So, in Hebrew, v'yatsa hinam in kesef. Then she goes free when she reaches 12 years old. That's it, without any money. She's just free. So, at that point, she's like the male slave. She can just go and be off. No, this is a strange list of laws. How do we understand this whole thing? It does seem a bit crazy. So let's think about maybe a theory and the subjugation of women in the Bible, or what we would call these days gender equality. Okay, there's a basic fundamental problem in all the capitalistic societies, and that is if you allow unrestrained capitalism, where theoretically there's basically a level playing field, everyone has the same opportunity invariably, and there's still a wealthy class, poor class, and possibly over time, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Why is that? There is equal opportunity. Why can't the poor just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and get moving and keep getting better? Why do the poor get poorer? Why do the rich get richer? And how could this be dealt with? So in our society, Democrats might say, let's redistribute the wealth. Let's tax the rich and give the money to the poor. Obviously, we know they're not that way anymore. They're the opposite, but in the old days, that's how they were. That would level the playing field. The Republicans might come along and say the playing field was already level. Everybody has equal opportunity. We can't just redistribute the wealth. How does the Torah deal with the problem? The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Why do the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? So, I'd like to suggest that the reason for this wealth disparity lies in the social nature of humanity itself. We make friends with people who are like us, right? The rich people live amongst themselves. They marry among themselves. Marry my daughter, she's coming from a good family. Or my son, right? The poor live amongst themselves. They marry amongst themselves. They socialize amongst themselves. Very difficult for a rich person to marry a poor person. Now, maybe a little more common these days than it was at one time, but it's still a bit difficult. All right? So, why is it that one would go to Harvard and Yale and Columbia? Part of it is for the education, but part of it is for the social bonds, the friends one would make. As you leave the university, friends hire friends, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. All right, so those rich friends, they might hire their rich friends to work for them and with them. What's the way out? The Torah has a solution. And it's not about redistributing wealth, it's about changing social construct. All right, so we're going to go on. In Hebrew, it says, Ki yimkor ish it bito lama. When a man is so destitute and he asks himself, how can my daughter possibly have a better life? So maybe he's thinking about, hey, how can I help her to live a better life than what she's living now with me? Who's she going to marry? We're poor. I have no money for a dowry, no money for anything. The Torah gives him a chance. It creates a fiction called female servitude, an institution that has everything to do with the very opposite of servitude. Okay, bringing of equality into the class system. The Torah gives a father the right to, quote, sell his daughter in servitude into a man, a wealthy man, a man that he chooses, a family that he would want his daughter to marry into. Very interesting. And there is every expectation that as she grows up in the household, they will take her in, and the master of the house will find someone in the house to marry her, himself, one of his sons. All right? Why would the Bible support female servitude and slavery? So, Vihi yimor ish et bito lama, when a man will, quote, sell his daughter as a maidservant, lo tetze ketzet ha-abadim, and she is not meant to leave servitude the way male servants leave servitude. The hope is that she will leave in an entirely new way, in a way that's not open to male slaves. She will leave through marriage. Once she's married, she's no longer a slave. She's part of the family, a daughter or wife. All right. So she will become an equal of the nobility because she will marry into them. If it doesn't work out, if she's so evil in the eyes of her master, or he doesn't like her, then he has to give the father the chance to buy her back at the prorated rate, like I said before. Don't allow her to stay in the house. She's not going to marry into the household. I don't want her. So either she's going to get bought back by the father, or at the end of the 6 years, she's going to go free. Okay. Lam nachi lo yimshal amarcha bevigdoba. If the master doesn't marry her, and he doesn't marry her after his son, and the father can't buy her back, the master should think to himself that he can sell her to someone else. He does not have the power over her. Okay, bevigdoba. He dealt treacherously with her. All right, and it's not right. He didn't marry her. He couldn't find anyone in the house to marry her. She was so evil. All right, and if his son does marry her, kemishpat habanot yasela, you know how he has to treat her, right? Kimishpat habanot yasela. He has to treat her like a full-fledged daughter-in-law. Okay, no longer a servant anymore. She is your daughter-in-law. She's an equal to the other women in the household, to everybody else. And the Torah is very careful about this. So in those times, like I said, polygamy was allowed. The Torah anticipates the whole problem. What if the master of his son says, yeah, I'll marry this girl out of pity. She's going to be my little servant girl wife. Then, of course, I have to marry my movie star wife. No. Im acharet yikach lo. If he should ever choose to marry another woman, shera kesuta bionata lo yigra. He dare not diminish the rights of his first wife. She is an equal. The Torah guards her rights. And trust me, if anybody went outside of what the Torah said in those days, the Lord dealt with him severely. He heard the cries of the person being wronged. So the Kiddushin explains that normally in marriage you would have to give the woman a ring. All right? Here you don't have to give her anything. The original money that the master gave the father serves as the money for the kiddushin, or the dowry, as the money to effectuate the marriage. The Torah is saying also, in effect, in retrospect, once you decide to marry her, she was never your servant girl. She is your equal. She is a wife in your household. So, is female slavery justified in the Bible? Well, the Torah in this law is not attempting a band-aid solution of the problem of class. It is not attempting to redistribute wealth. It's not lying and saying it's all equal. The playing field is equal. the Torah simply recognize why the playing field isn't equal. The issue is social bonds, and the Torah is trying to attack that issue in the most just way possible. Okay, in the most just way possible. Trying to ironically use slavery, which is the most unequal institution on earth, to achieve the goal of equality. So let me leave you with those thoughts in this first part of the Torah portion of Mishpatim, and I will see you again in the second part. Thank you for joining us today, and Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom again to all of you, and I want to welcome you again to the second part of the Parasha Mishpatim, and this time we're not talking about female slavery. Well, we're just simply talking about family drama that is hiding within the laws. And how can the laws of the Mishpatim help correct past mistakes? All right, so after the very interesting stories of the Exodus and the revelation of Mount Sinai, Parasha Mishpatim kind of hits us like a ton of bricks. All right, it's got law after law out of all these little nitpicky things like property damage, personal injuries, female slavery, etc., etc. It's kind of hard to relate to these kind of dry legalists when they're put side by side with the Torah's most epic and memorable stories. You know, we go from this incredible story to all this long list of laws of the most smallest details. But I have to say, what if the laws aren't merely what they appear to be? What if these laws have something to tell us, a secret about one of the Torah's most familiar stories? All right, so join me as I explore the stories hiding within these laws. I'm Harel Clint Fry, I'm a rabbi here at Beit Shalom in Pozzuoli, Italy. I want to welcome you to the second part today, and thank you for joining me. Mishpatim might be kind of one of the most anticlimactic parashas in the whole Torah, if you think about it. It's not exciting at all. Like I said, we just finished reading about the Exodus from Egypt with all its signs and wonders, talking about Pesach, which is the Passover, the majestic revelation at Sinai. But then right after, we get hit with Mishpatim. What is Mishpatim? Laws, commandments. And it's law, like I said, about injuries, damages, fines, punishments, you name it. It's as if God is saying, okay, guys, story time is over. Now that I have your attention, here's what the Torah is really about, laws. Now, what is the meaning behind the laws of Mishpatim? If we kind of scratch beneath the surface and read these laws more closely, there's a whole lot more going on than meets the eye. And to show you what I mean, I want to look at a little group of laws with you, just one section, and see what we can notice. Okay, so it starts off with Umakeh aviv ve'imo mot yumat. If someone strikes their father or mother, they shall be put to death. Wow. Exodus chapter 21, verses 15 through 17. If they strike their mother and father, they hit them. They are to be put to death. Wow, imagine nowadays, in age, I think our population will be a lot less already on this earth, if that were to be the case. So, Begonev ish umkaro benitza viado. Here's the second part. And if someone kidnaps another person and sells them, and they are found guilty, mot yumat. Mot yumat. They too get put to death. Wow. Okay, so the third part is umkalel aviv vimo. If someone curses their parents, not just strikes them, but curses them, mot yumat. What does that mean again? They're put to death. Wow. There's all that death nowadays. I think if these happen nowadays, people kidnap people and sold them, or cursed their mother and father, or struck their mother and father. Wow, like I said, there would be a lot less people on the face of the earth right now than there are today, because it happens a lot. So let's stop right here for a second and play a little game. that we here at Beit Shalom like to call which of these things is not like the other. We've got a verse about hitting parents. There's a verse about kidnapping, and then a verse about cursing parents. So which one doesn't fit? I would say kidnapping, don't you think? It seems kind of out of place. It's kind of stuck between two verses about parents. It totally breaks the flow here. So why didn't the Torah just teach us the laws about hitting parents and cursing parents and putting those two together and then move on and tell us about kidnapping? All right, so that's kind of the first question. So let's just put that to the side for a moment, and we'll come back to it after and see a bit more of this section of laws. The verses continue with more laws about people hurting each other, some guys who fighting, someone who hits their servant, and then we get to the following scenario again. Pardon me. Mehi yinatsu anashim v'nagefu isha hara. So some men are fighting and they inadvertently hit a pregnant woman. Wow, we're fighting and suddenly a pregnant woman comes along and we hit her. As a result, she has a miscarriage. V'yatzeu yeladeha velo ye ason anosh ye anesh. Okay, so what is the punishment for that? Well, it all depends. If the assault causes a miscarriage, if it doesn't kill the woman herself, the men are punished with a fine in court. Wow. So that's said as kasher, yashit alav baal, aisha, vinatan, biflivim. Okay. So, however, there's another thing. Ve'im ason yeye. If the woman also dies, venatata nefesh nachat nafesh. You shall give a soul in exchange for a soul. Very interesting. So, there's some strange things, in my opinion, going on here. Let's start with the last line, a soul for a soul. It's now become a somewhat famous phrase about biblical punishment, but what does it mean? Is it just a poetic way of saying off with their heads? Well, it doesn't seem so, because throughout these verses, we keep hearing about the death penalty. But each time the Torah uses the words mot yumat, a person shall be put to death. So here it says nefesh tachat nefesh, a soul for a soul, seems to be saying something else. But what is it? Now, on the topic of strange language, look at how the Torah describes the death of the mother. Literally, if the tragedy takes place. The Torah could have said this as a result of the miscarriage. The pregnant woman might die, or she may be killed. Im tereg. Okay? But instead it uses this kind of ambiguous phrase, a tragedy. An ason, as it says in the Hebrew language, which is really usually the unusual word in the Torah. It's so rare, in fact, that it only appears in one other place in the entire Torah, and we'll find out where the other place, ason, shows up. So, what is the biblical connection to the Mishpatim law? Well, the only other mention of ason is actually in the story of Joseph and his brothers. In the epic speech that Judah gave right before Joseph revealed his true identity to them. Posing as a merciless Egyptian official, Joseph was threatening to keep Benjamin as his prisoner for stealing his cup, which we know he had planted in Benjamin's sack. So Judah was horrified about what this would do to their father, Jacob. Okay, and he begged Joseph to reconsider. So here's the thing. The death of the miscarriage of the child in the woman can cause her to die too, that agony, right? So here we have the same word being used in this case of Judah speaking about what keeping Benjamin as a prisoner would do to their father, Jacob. So he repeated his father's fears of sending Benjamin down to Egypt. Jacob had told them, if Benjamin suffers an ason, okay, I will go down to my grave in misery. He will die. It would just kill him. He thinks he's already lost one son. If he loses another one, especially from his favorite wife, what's it going to do to him? So you might say, big deal. No, ason, that doesn't really tell us anything. They're both tragic stories. So that's the word that's used. And if this were all that's here, I would agree with you. But here's the thing. If we read these texts side by side, Judah's speech about Jacob and Benjamin, and those verses about the pregnant woman in Mishpatim, there are a lot more connections between them. Ason is just simply the tip of the iceberg. So let's take a look. When Judah was pleading with Joseph to free Benjamin, he recounted the entire conversation between Jacob and the brothers before they left for Egypt. Jacob said, Tim cheshenim lede lesot. You know that my wife Rachel bore me 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Okay, and I've lost one of them. So those words, yatse meiti, are a bit odd. Okay, literally mean that one child came out of me. These words actually have a very special and specific connotation, which comes up in the verses we saw back in the laws, in the Mishpatim. The pregnant woman is hit, okay, and their children come out of her. Obviously, if you have a miscarriage, the children dies and comes out of her. So this is how the Torah describes a miscarriage. And strangely, it's the same way that Jacob talks about losing Joseph. Why would that be, do you think? And it gets even weirder, okay? Because if we think about those words in the Mishpatim, okay, teziv le'edeh, it means that the woman loses her children in plural. Why would the Torah speak about a miscarriage in this way? How often is a pregnant woman carrying more than one child? It doesn't make any sense. But oddly, it does mirror Jacob's words where he said, Rachel bore me 2 sons, and I've lost one of them. Now I might lose the second one too. So the parallels do continue. The next thing Jacob said, okay, what if Benjamin suffers an ason? Okay, just like in the other part of the Bible. As we said it's the same. This tragedy, they may befall the mother in the Mishpatim, in the laws. What if that happens? Judah says, Nafsho keshura benafsho. Jacob's soul is bound up with Benjamin's soul. Okay. If Jacob loses Benjamin, he's going to die too. Nafsho keshura benafsho. It's eerily similar to the end of those verses in the Mishpatim, Nefesh tachat nafesh, one soul for the other, which is also a consequence of an ason taking place. Now that we've seen all this, we can get back to the verse we were wondering about before. Gomer gevre osh, someone who kidnaps a person and then sells them. Mishu nushu koter adam komer odzo. Okay? What does that remind us of? Do the parallels of Mishpatim law continue? It kind of sounds a lot like what happened to Joseph. The brothers took him from his father, threw him into a pit, and sold him as a slave. So for some inexplicable reason, we're tying together this part, this little section of laws in the Mishpatim has echoes of both the beginning and the end of the struggle between Joseph and his brothers, from the kidnapping and sale of Joseph all the way to Judah's speech that ultimately brought the brothers and Joseph back together again. Why are there these parallels here? What could these laws about injuries and damages possibly have to do with Joseph and his brothers? I think that these parallels may actually be touching on something at the very core of the entire Joseph story. So you see, if you were to ask most people, why did the brothers hate Joseph in the first place? They would say, well, that's easy, because he was Jacob's favorite son. He had even a special coat. He was a bit of a tattletale. He would go telling his brothers. And if you know, that doesn't make anybody happy. And he had these dreams about ruling over his brothers, which is, I think, kind of not exactly intelligent, because he went and told them. I would have been quiet. Might have solved a lot of problems. But that was how things went. Okay. So it's not actually so simple. You see, the roots of his brother's hatred that caused them to kidnap and sell him as a slave, Joseph, actually began way before any of this, before Joseph's dreams, before Jacob gave him that special coat, and even before any of them was born. It began with Jacob's love for Rachel. Rachel was Jacob's beloved wife, and Joseph was her firstborn son. That's why Jacob loved him, and that's the reason the brothers hated him. They already knew that that Jacob loved Rebekah more than their mother, Leah. Okay, it wasn't about the way Jacob favored one. Maybe it wasn't. It was about basically, I'm sorry, the way Jacob favored one mother over the other. It'd probably be the same way nowadays. Maybe, I don't know. And how in turn he favored one set of children over the others, and Joseph bore the brunt of this whole thing. Okay. So now we're coming back to Mishpatim. We find that these laws about kidnapping and selling someone, laws that remind us of the sale of Joseph, put together with laws about hitting and cursing parents. So what is the backstory behind the laws of the Mishpatim? Maybe those laws aren't misplaced after all. Maybe they're grouped together to show us the context, the backstory, the whole struggle between Joseph and his brothers, that Joseph's kidnapped and sold Joseph, but they just as easily could have hit or cursed their parents. Caused a lot of damage to their father for sure, and to Rachel. And because when it comes down to it, they were the real source of all this anger and jealousy. So they were, what they did to Joseph, they were really doing to their parents. I never thought about that way. I know I didn't. But the brothers didn't acknowledge that. All they saw was little Joseph walking around with his little coat in his dreams, and they took it all out on him. But their anger was definitely misguided. The cause of it all came from their parents. So now that's not to say that the brothers should have attacked their parents. It's not like everything would have been fantastic if they had just hit and cursed their mom and dad instead of poor Joseph. But I do think that this is showing us what the real issue was. The real problem was the inequality in the love between the parents, which basically trickled down to the next generation, but nobody addressed that issue and everybody suffered because of it. So just imagine how things would have played out differently if Jacob, his children, and his wives had gone for some good family therapy at that time. Yeah, if they all got out in a room together and talked it out. Joseph, do you realize what it's like to see you walking around in that crazy multicolored coat? Dad, why did you always love Rachel more than our mother? Do you know how it makes us feel? All right, so the brothers may have realized that their anger wasn't about their little brother after all at that point, and the entire sale of Joseph may have neither taken place, but that didn't happen. And it took years of anguish and suffering before they could come around and make amends. So I think that now we can also understand the parallels that we see later in the same section of laws between Judah's speech and the woman who suffers miscarriage. Because what is going on there is that some men are fighting, but who do they end up hurting? They hurt a mother carrying a child or children. So once upon a time, some men were fighting, 10 men launched an attack against their brother, but beneath it all, they were attacking his mother. They were lashing out at Rachel. Now, this seems to be how Jacob experienced it, because as far as Jacob is concerned, losing Joseph was a miscarriage. He lost his son. Doesn't matter how old he was. He didn't just lose his son, he lost Rachel's son. That pained him and plagued him for all of his years was the loss of the mother's child. And so when he thinks back to the terrible loss, he says, Yatsa me'iti. He speaks about it like the miscarriage. Okay. So that's what it is to him. Then when he's facing the risk of losing Benjamin, Rachel's second son, wow, he calls it a nason, the word reserved for a mother's death. Because even though Rachel had already been dead for years, at the point where Benjamin and all of them meet up with Joseph, as long as Benjamin was alive, Jacob still had a vestige of her in his life. He had a part of her left, right? So losing Benjamin would mean losing his final link to Rachel. She would be gone forever to him. He couldn't live with that. That's the tragedy that he fears. And it would be so devastating if that had happened. Jacob could not go on living. He would literally die. Nafsho keshura benafsho. Jacob's attachment to Benjamin would result in nefesh tachat nefesh, one soul lost on the account of another. Wow. That is, to me, that's incredible. So understanding Mishpatim law in a modern context, how can we do that? Something we've noticed time and time again here in Beit Shalom is that the stories of the Torah become laws, which oftentimes become the most painful and difficult experiences of the past show up later on in legal terms. All the things that have happened since the time of Abraham up until now, God's covering these things with the laws. He's using these laws to protect. He's not just saying, don't do this and this and that. He's trying to protect his people. He wants to protect them from harming each other, from being hurt again, from all the pain that they've already gone through from, like I said, the time of Abraham till now. Okay. Oftentimes, the most painful and difficult experiences of the past show up later as legal terms, like I said. So as if within the Torah's laws, there's a commentary on those earlier stories showing us where things went wrong and how to repair mistakes of the past. I think it's incredible. So when we see the laws and the stories interacting in this way, all of a sudden it becomes very real. The Torah isn't just spinning ancient legal theory or telling stories about characters that lived long ago. It's building up, it's creating a structure here. The stories and laws are speaking to complex human experiences, the same kinds of things that you and I run into in our own relationships. And I have to add a point here that I think, to tell you the truth, if the world were to run its legal system according to the Torah, we would have a lot less crime and a lot less problem. Yes, there would still be crime, there would be sin, but there would be real ways of dealing with it, consistent ways of dealing with it. Somebody would think twice about going and murdering somebody, or kidnapping somebody, or cursing their parents, or striking their parents. You name it. All these laws that were written out in the Bible, if they were put to practice today, I think would really solve a lot of problems. We face these same pitfalls. We can also cause damage when we are blinded by feelings of anger or jealousy and fail to discern the real cause of those feelings. By giving legal structures to these stories, the Torah is giving us both a warning and kind of a medication to put on top of it, a salve, so to speak. It's showing us where our ancestors went wrong and how we can avoid repeating the same mistakes. And if the damage has already been done, it's showing us ways we may still be able to repair it. So I kind of hope you enjoyed this video. I know I enjoyed making it. And the truth is, the links to the Joseph story, as we saw here, are just kind of barely scratching the surface. There are many more Joseph references scattered throughout the laws and the Mishpatim. I'm sure we will be seeing those later. Check out the following video that we will be doing later. And if you may, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We really like to hear your feedback. And if this has blessed you, please let us know also in the comments section, or you may contact us on our website here at Beit Shalom. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. I hope you've been blessed, and please join us for the third part. Shabbat Shalom.
Now for the Aaronic blessing. Adesso la benedizione di Aarone. Yevarechecha Adonai veishmerecha. Yair Adonai panavalecha veichunecha. Yisa Adonai panavalecha v'yasim lecha shalom. B'shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Sarha shalom shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of Yeshua the Messiah, the Prince of Peace. Shalom.
Che il Signore vi benedica e vi protegga. Il Signore faccia risplendere il suo volto su di voi e vi sia propizio. Che il Signore elevi il suo volto su di voi e vi dia la pace. In nome di Yeshua, Gesù, il Messia, il Principe della pace. Shalom.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom. Shabbat shalom.